Saddle up your horses.
Pitter patter. Let's get at her. It is another episode of the Manely Broncos Podcast. We certainly hope that you guys have had a great 4th of July. Hopefully you had a great time with your family. You got enough sleep, I should say, given the fact that, but by the way, if you guys are still shooting off,
we'll sleep when we're dead.
I was going to say, if you guys are still shooting off fireworks, I'm very disappointed in you. I will just say that. I am very disappointed in you if you are still shooting off fireworks, like basically, should I say a week and a day, right? After the 4th of July. What I saw Nick and JT have this brief conversation on their Mile High Symposium on the network. For you, Brandon, what is the cutoff? What is the cutoff for you on the
for the time that I'm doing fireworks, or what? So, because I haven't set off my own fireworks in like years.
But just in general, like, what is your typical cutoff? Like, is it, like right at midnight? Is it July 5th? Like, when is the cutoff for you?
I mean, I don't know. It depends. There's no cutoff. It just whenever I go to bed. I think I went to bed like 1 a.m.
For me, but
I'm a night person.
For me, I would say, it's it would be July 5th would probably end up being my cutoff. I mean, I would say midnight, but I think
it is July 5th.
Well, I mean, yeah, time-wise, sure. But I mean, if I was to really just put a thing on, I would probably say, midnight. But nonetheless, as I said, I hope you guys had a great 4th of July. Josh, I hope you had a great 4th of July over in wherever your barren wasteland that you're living in now. But we certainly will have a great show lined up for you guys. If you guys are watching on Twitter or YouTube, if you are watching on YouTube, more importantly, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share the show, have your friends tell their friends about the Manely Broncos podcast, and I should say about the MHRT network. Like I said, we have a great show lined up, and we are inching ever so closer to Broncos training camp. We are inching closer to training camp, and not just that, but we are, of course, inching ever so close to NCAA 25, which, I guess some people, if you are Xbox...
We're also inching quite close to...
That's right.
Deadpool and Wolverine. What were you saying about NCAA?
Well, I mean, if you are an Xbox user, I've heard somebody or some people, I guess, can download it a little bit earlier than people that have a PlayStation. I mean, I've actually known like a couple of people that were able to download it. There were people with Xbox that were able to download it and stuff like already or whatever. But yeah, I guess I'm able to play it.
We're also 57 days away from just like football in general. So
yeah, play it, I think, on July 15th. But it's going to be a glorious day for NCAA and Deadpool.
I think, Deadpool's a bit further out. I think that's like the 20-something.
6th, I think.
20. I thought it was 27th.
Yeah.
26th. Yeah. Friday.
Did you end up getting the game, though? Did you end up getting...
I didn't pre-order it, but I will get it.
The gameplay looks fantastic from everything that I've been seeing. I will say there is one critique, and this is for future games for NCAA, and like I hope that they do the 2K route, which is with it being college football and there being just great generational teams over the course of college football's rich history. I pray that they do the classic historic teams of not just the decade, but the entire of college football's history, where you are able to play you know, the 95 Nebraska Cornhuskers versus, you know, the 2001 Texas Longhorns, right? Or you know, the USC teams, like have the classic USC teams, right, when they would play Texas, or the classic Miami teams, right? Or the classic Miami team that had, like, what is it, you know, Ray Lewis, or even like the Ed Reed, Clinton Portis year, right? So I mean, like, you know, having some of those classic teams would be incredible, I feel like.
That would be super fun. Yeah. I just want to, like, so, okay, what's your plan? Are you going to be like the guy that goes through, you're going to pick like your college team, you're going to do whatever the campaign is, or like, what are you envisioning? And also, who's your team? That's not Nebraska. Who's your non-Nebraska team? Let's
first start off with the big non-negotiable. If you are playing college, if you are playing NCAA 25 and you are playing nothing but Ultimate Team, and you guys are watching Manely Broncos, please get out of this chat.
It's because Cam hates you.
But seriously though,
because Cam hates you.
But seriously, I will be playing probably Road to Glory, Dynasty, Franchise Mode. Those are probably those modes that I'll be playing. And as far as Dynasty, I will selfishly say there will be a year where I will do Nebraska as a Dynasty. However, based on solely the fact it is a Dynasty, I will probably be choosing a no-name school or an up-and-coming school, a team. I think I've picked Arkansas State, go with Arkansas State, and then go from there and build them basically up from the ground up.
That'd be pretty fun.
Yeah. What about you? Do you have like a certain?
I don't have one. I mean, I might just pick Oregon just for.
That doesn't fit a Dynasty. That doesn't fit Dynasty, Brandon.
Okay, but because Bo Nix.
That doesn't fit Dynasty, Brandon.
I don't care.
The point of Dynasty is about building a team from literally the ground. Why not like Coastal Carolina? I mean, Coastal Carolina has been a really
but I just want to be Oregon because it's fun. But okay, if I had to pick a horrible team, like I had to pick like the team that I'm going to totally rebuild. I probably would want to pick like Florida State. Just kidding. Just kidding. That was mostly for one particular listener.
Well, I was gonna say like for giggles, it actually would make sense for like Nebraska just as a dynasty team based on like where they've been. Colorado, maybe to like a certain extent, actually would probably fall into the category of dynasty team.
I might pick like Troy. Troy would be fun.
Oh, okay.
The Trojans.
Appalachian State, maybe too.
Appalachian State would be interesting.
Yeah.
Liberty, which I feel like I've mentioned before.
Liberty, I think they lately, the last like 3 years, they've been averaging 10 wins. But
yeah, but like
I know in terms of a powerhouse though, yeah.
Like they're not a powerhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, their all-time record is like slightly above 500.
What's up, Big Mike? You actually just entered right as we were talking about NCAA and Dynasty. Apparently, Brandon wants to choose Oregon, by the way.
Hey,
you missed that.
I just because the Bo Nix connection, like it'd be fun. It would just be fun to go through as Oregon and just prepare myself for what we're going to see in 57 days. But nonetheless, redirecting, we're super excited about it. Yeah, we certainly can wait. And back to our, of course, regular scheduled broadcast of Manely Broncos. We're continuing our theme. We're continuing our theme of going through the positions of the Broncos. We spent our entire time last week going through the trenches, the pass rush. It seems appropriate that we focus our attention on the back end or finish up the entire defense, and that would be the linebackers, the inside linebackers, and then the secondary, which includes the cornerback room, safety room,
and then we'll round that out, and then we'll head to the offensive side of the ball as we close things out just a little bit before training camp. Actually, it's going to be a very interesting thing in terms of that secondary room, and especially the safety room. And it'll be done so without Justin Simmons. And obviously, I've got, as everybody knows, his jersey down there in the back. News broke.
I was about to say, I don't remember what team it was, but there's been like some kind of report that some team is like pretty heavily discussing, like talking to his representation.
It broke yesterday. I want to say Neil Driscoll is the person who reported it, and it was a fit I really didn't exactly have on my radar, but it's the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh, that's right. That's what it was. It was the Ravens. Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Could you imagine a safety room before we dive into the Broncos safety room? But could you imagine Kyle Hamilton?
Yeah,
and Justin Simmons
that'd be fun.
That'd be crazy because, funny enough, Hamilton's comparison when he came out of college, was it Notre Dame, was Justin Simmons. So basically having, the player he had been comped to on your football team for, let's just say 2 years, would be a lot of fun. And not to mention Baltimore's definitely been going for it. They signed Derrick Henry, helped the running game, helped take a lot of pressure off of Lamar Jackson. They made obviously some other moves, some other defensive moves in the offseason. It'll be interesting to see what they'll be able to do. But yeah, if they're able to get Justin Simmons, that would be, and the defense is already loaded too. So if you're able to get Justin there, yeah, that would be a crazy nice and depth signing. Should I say for that secondary?
Yeah, that'd be wild.
Speaking of the secondary, I will say, and I know that it's been said, I'm sure numerous times by a lot of people. Yeah, obviously I'm a big Justin Simmons fan, but I'm super excited about that secondary that the Broncos have, and I actually think that despite having the loss of Simmons, I think that the versatility and the way that they can use that safety room might actually help the Broncos more than hurt it in terms of possibly the loss of Simmons. I mean, you can't really replace Simmons, but I think the way, Brandon, that they can possibly use this safety room is, I think, in some ways how they wish they would have used it if a guy like a Caden Stearns was healthy, right? So if PJ Locke, who is coming back, I want to say on a 2-year deal, right? 1 to 2 year deal. I think that, I'm very fascinated with how they'll be able to use it with, the guys of Brandon Jones in the room, PJ Locke, Caden Stearns, all of which, and we've said it numerous times before on Manly Broncos, though, when that move happened with Brandon Jones, of course, and PJ Locke, a lot of familiarity, in terms of that's in that safety room. So, and then of course, you add the move, arguably, of the entire offseason, which, is going to be putting on pressure for Vance Joseph entirely. And that would be the hiring of Jim Leonhard as the secondary coach. So you add that wrinkle to the secondary, how aggressive he is as a mind and as a defensive mind, Brandon. I am very fascinated with how they're really going to operate that safety room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it'll definitely be interesting. I feel like this is going to be I kind of wish we could bring back Justin Simmons, just because I don't know what this safety room is going to look like. Obviously, they like PJ Locke. Caden Stearns, I think, is going to be kind of the big question mark / X factor in that room. And then Brandon Jones, who they brought in from Miami. Yeah. As a free agent, is going to be in the mix as well. But I just think, I don't know, we need to see some kind of, I like PJ Locke. I don't think he's PJ Locke, Brandon Jones, and Caden Stearns. and that safety room is not going to be the same or even remotely close to, in my opinion, what it was like to even just have Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson going back there. So I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting to see, but I think a lot of that to me leans on like, is Caden Stearns going to come back healthy? Is he going to look even remotely like his old self that we had seen? And we didn't even see that much of him. Like he obviously was injured. He was
talented,
pretty young, and then he got that injury early on in his career. Super talented guy, but we just don't know. PJ Locke has shown that he's a capable safety, but he's not Justin Simmons. Brandon Jones, I really have not watched him. I can't tell you. I mean, he's only 26. He might be a serviceable.
Not in depth, should we say? We've watched him, but not.
I mean, like I haven't really watched him. I haven't studied him. Let me really rephrase that. I haven't studied him. There's a difference to me watching and studying.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched him just anytime I watched the Dolphins.
Right.
But yeah, he's. I don't know. We'll see. I don't really know what he's going to look like, but I think another big thing to me is like, what are they going to do with JL Skinner? Because from the time we drafted him, he was kind of like, sort of like that Kareem Jackson-esque mold of just super physical. What's that?
Or almost like Cam Chancellor. Just
like the super physical, I'm going to hit you kind of guy. And we really haven't seen him do anything. I don't know if he was in the doghouse. I don't know if he had some undisclosed injury. Or what happened there, but that's going to be something to monitor. But I just feel like, I don't know, the safety room to me is another one of those lots of talent, but also a lot of like, there isn't that guy. Could Caden Stearns be that guy? Absolutely. If he's healthy.
Here you go.
Which we just don't know.
Here you go, Brandon. This is from Big Mike. Watch Jones from 2022 to 2023 last season. He didn't fit their new.
He didn't fit Fangio's scheme.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. Fangio, I don't know. He's more a linebacker guy than a.
But I was going to say a lot of people have been really coming out against Fangio. And and I will be the first to tell you that some of the stuff that was coming out by the Dolphins was some of the stuff we have been hearing from Bronco players about how frustrated they were with Fangio when he was the head coach. So it's not overly disappointing or shocking. I actually should say the comments that we were hearing from the Miami players, which is to a degree somewhat puzzling in the sense that when they actually asked Bradley Chubb, he seemed like he was really excited to, have Fangio be his defensive coordinator, and other players were vastly vocal about the idea of him leaving.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
separate point entirely.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of I don't know, anytime I hear players kind of go through that, it's sort of like, I mean, honestly, kind of sort of like what Big Mike is saying, which is like, he just doesn't, I don't think he's the kind of, I don't consider him a player's coach. Let me just say that. Like, he's not really the guy that's going to connect with their players. He's not going to be.
I was going to say, yeah. Vance on the other hand, right? If we're going to go Bronco, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's just the one thing with Fangio. And like, I feel like I honestly just think it's going to happen. Like, I think anywhere he coaches, he's going to have that moniker because he's very much like that old school. I'm just going to call what I'm going to call. I'm the defensive mastermind. I'm going to tell you what to do, and you need to do it. Right. And he's not really going to be one of those like raw in the huddle, like talking to the guys, like he's part of the safety unit or part of the secondary or part of the defense. Like, some more player centric coaches kind of do. I think that's just kind of who Fangio is. That's just like his reputation that he's built up. And he is obviously older, but he also has that mentality and that scheme skill to like, he's still one of the best defensive coordinators of all time, to be honest. And like, there's a reason for that. But yeah, I mean, I feel like anywhere he goes, he's not going to be the most popular coach. Like, he's not going to be the coach that players love. He's not going to be the coach that everyone's like upset that he's like leaving if he has to leave. I mean, I'm just to be honest, but he is a coach that knows how to get it done. we'll see what that's going to look like. But yeah, he's very much a like you're going to fit or I'm going to make you fit, which I feel like a lot of coaches are, sadly. Or I'm just going to get rid of you and I'm going to find someone else that fits what I want to do. So maybe Brandon Jones kind of falls into that mold of like he's super talented and he just has no like Fangio was like, nope, you don't do what I want you to do. And I'm not even going to try to find a way to make you like have an effect on this defense, even though you're really talented. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to put the player in there that I want to play, which to an extent is kind of what Vance Joseph did up until the midpoint of the season where he's like, well, no, this is like completely not working. And he probably got read the riot act by Sean Payton. He's like, well, you're going to get fired if you don't turn this around. And he kind of relented, got rid of some people. And like to his credit, he turned it around. Like good for him.
It was might have been the most exciting.
It was wild.
Defensive run we've seen in 8 years. I mean, yeah.
We did get, I mean, I will say, I think there was at least a slight amount of luck, mostly because just the amount of turnovers just was not remotely sustainable.
But the execution
was, he turned it around. But I do feel like until that point, it was kind of a similar method of like, this is what I want to do. And we're going to make that work. Like the players that I have, you're going to do that. And he kind of went through and was like, okay, well, the guys that I have are not going to fit what I'm wanting to do. And I need to get rid of some guys that are just not a benefit to this defense. I'm going to bring in the guys or give more time to the guys that are able to make an impact. And I'm going to adjust my scheme a little bit and fit what they like to do and what they do well. And that's what kind of helps turn that around. So to his credit, he did kind of fix that. But I feel like Vance Joseph, even as the players coach, I mean, kind of has a similar thing that he does that. But I feel like most coaches, unfortunately, have that reputation.
Yeah.
Unless you're Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see what the safety room does. Like, don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying the safety room is going to suck. I'm just wary about. I don't think it's going to be as good as we've seen in years past. But I also think we were spoiled with Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson, sadly. And I mean, we still have other great players in the secondary.
We should say
we've talked about.
We should say younger Kareem Jackson.
Kareem Jackson, fair. But we are still going to have like other guys in the secondary that are going to be able to make impact. We still have PS2, best corner in the league. We still have one of the best slot corners.
Maybe boundary, depending on
potentially in the league. So I mean, like as a whole, I'm not worried about the safety room. I just feel like I think the ceiling is probably lower, and I think the floor is lower. I think they're both lower.
I actually could see the ceiling be a bit higher, but it just depends on how they want to use that room, like the versatility of the room, and the intrigue of the room. And I think that the one area where I am the most intrigued by the safety room is the one thing that I will say that the safety room before, and whether that was because of the players they had there in the room or schematically, they just could never really make it work. But I do know that in the defensive run, when they were able to really hit its stride for the amount of weeks that they were able to and really push themselves into playoff contention with that defense, a lot of the reason why they put themselves in that position was they were creating a lot of pass rush with that safety room. Mm-hmm. And if you watch Brandon Jones with the Dolphins from 2022 to 2023, or I should say his career really with the Dolphins, he is a sack artist, if you will, from that safety room. And PJ Locke actually was a blitzing safety. And so I think I've heard someone say this before, but I could actually see almost a sack competition between Brandon Jones and PJ Locke about who's going to be able to, get to the quarterback, how many kind of sacks they'll have on the year, quarterback pressures, QB hits, etc. So that's really the area where I am very fascinated with how they use that safety room. And especially too, now that we can at least talk about a healthy Caden Stearns, how exactly will they use him, right? And especially Brandon Jones, with the fact that he's a sack artist, right? So I think that when you go back to living in the glory days, if you will. But I mean, like, if you look at it from the 2015 perspective and how they operated that defense, or I should say even with 2014, when they had those free safeties of, Darian Stewart, TJ Ward, and then there was another safety, David Bruton, right? David Bruton, I think, was right into that mix as well. But like, they had three safeties and they were operating those free safety looks under Wade Phillips. I'm very curious to see how the Broncos are going to be operating that room, because I think that three safety looks is not out of the cards for the Broncos. And I think that, is Caden Stearns, is he going to be a rover? Is he going to be a true rover with that safety room? And is he going to be a player where, the game I can't get out of my head is unironically, the best game of his career. And that was the Dallas Cowboys game, where he made a unbelievable interception in that Cowboys game with Dak Prescott.
Well, the Cowboys game, honestly, was probably the best game of his career that we had seen to that point.
Right. It's still the best game of his career. But like, how I would probably use him would be that rover role, because he's just purely athletic. Now, my question for you, and I at least I think I know the answer, and this is the question for everybody that's in the chat. And obviously, the overarching question you could really put to really any position room for the most part, just based on the question. But who do you trust more in that safety room? I mean, obviously Justin Simmons is gone. So who do you trust more in that safety room?
I mean, by default, I think I have to say PJ Locke, because he's been in the room. At this point, he's the veteran safety in that room. He's been in this defensive system. He's someone that clearly we trust. Brandon Jones is coming in. He's new. JL Skinner, obviously. Caden Stearns. I mean, Caden Stearns, yes. Like, he would also be. Well, let me rephrase slightly. Even though he's younger, I'd almost say Caden Stearns would be more of the veteran, but because of the injury, like, I don't know. So I'm going to say PJ Locke because of the Caden Stearns injury. Brandon Jones, again, is new. Everyone else in that room is just kind of like, don't know. JL Skinner, literally have no clue. Delarian Turner-Yell might not even be on the team. I don't know what's going to happen there. Like, he's kind of been bad, just be honest. Omar Brown, Tanner McAllister, other guys are just like, who? I have no idea. Who? Is kind of my reaction, honestly, there. Not that they're bad. I mean, I think Omar Brown, the Nebraska guy, right? I think.
Corner safety.
Corner. But, yeah, I mean, I think I have to say PJ Locke as a shoo-in, to be honest. Like, what do you think?
I think it's PJ. So, and my question is just also, too, who has the highest ceiling of the safeties in the room?
Caden Stearns, probably. Maybe JL Skinner, but probably Caden Stearns.
I probably would say Caden Stearns, but I actually would not rule out PJ Locke. And I realized I did say,
I mean, yeah, he definitely has a high ceiling.
Big Mike says Brandon Jones. And I think that he's the wild card of that mix, because obviously there's just so much at use for him, because I feel like you can do so much with him as positionally, that there's that athleticism to him, right? And I think that just so as much as we talk about Caden Stearns, I talked about Caden Stearns in that rover position, I wouldn't even be surprised if they actually have Brandon Jones in that role, and then they start operating Caden Stearns more in the true free safeties, or the two free safeties, if you will, of PJ Locke and and Caden Stearns, where they are simply reading that quarterback and reading and reacting based on their athleticism, right? And I think that the way that I think that this could work for the Broncos is, and I think I actually heard Caden talk about this on Let's Talk Broncos, but the safety room is actually not positionally how a lot of fans view it in terms of position, which is strong safety, free safety, right? It's actually like free safety 1, free safety 2. So, I mean, it helps having two different players with two different body types, two different skill sets, right? But if you have two free safeties, right, like it doesn't hurt at all for you to have a Caden Stearns and a PJ Locke. And one of the reasons why I feel like PJ could, in essence, be a player with a very high ceiling is in the sense that, like, his play in a Packers game is the play that it just will ring in my brain. And I mean, being there in person was just unbelievable to watch. And where we were sitting, for anybody that doesn't know, I mean, I have tickets to, I'm going to the Broncos game, and we have tickets to go there. We sit over, it's near 235, and which is basically almost like an all 22 view. So you're basically, seeing the end zone view. And so when Jordan Love was throwing that pass, like, we were able to see Locke read and react from the middle of the field to, the sideline almost, where he was able to make that interception. And then obviously the all 22 was able to confirm that. But it was about as Justin Simmons type of play from that safety, interception, that you were almost like, wow, Justin isn't the only person who can actually make a play like that. And maybe to Love's unfortunate, situation, he probably had a little bit of some loft on that ball to have, Locke get to that point. But that was still a very, very impressive play by PJ. And so, just basing it solely off of that, and obviously, what we have in the room, I will probably say PJ, but Brandon Jones might actually be the player who might be lifting the entire ceiling of the safety room.
Sure. Yeah, definitely could be. I mean, a guy that I think could raise the ceiling of that entire room for sure, like you mentioned. But I'm going to stick with Caden Stearns just because from what we've seen from him, like, I personally can't pick anyone else unless I see more of what they're going to be doing in this scheme. But I mean, not that I've even necessarily seen Caden Stearns much in this game, but just from what I've seen of him in the, like, I feel like as someone who's been at least on this team, even if the scheme has been different, I'm sticking with Caden Stearns for now. PJ Locke definitely, like, as it stands now, I haven't seen Brandon Jones in as a Bronco right now. If I had to rate the top two safeties on this team, I'm probably going Caden Stearns, PJ Locke, and maybe like the order is. That's probably the order I'd stick with, but like the order is probably negotiable. You can flip those around however you want.
Now, this is a very loaded question because it's another question that would fall in line with any positional group. But who has the most to prove of the safety room? So there actually might be far more candidates, in the sense of who has the most to prove. Yeah, Big Mike.
JL Skinner.
Big Mike says
Stearns, technically. I mean, prove that he can come back from the injury, sure. Yeah. I'm kind of torn between Delarian Turner-Yell and JL Skinner. Like, Delarian Turner-Yell, I don't know if I'd word it as he has the most to prove. I'd almost word it as like he has the hottest seat.
At least from what we can tell.
From what we can tell,
yeah.
Which obviously I don't know for sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's PJ Locke, but I mean, when the Broncos re-signed PJ, the hope was that he was probably, going to be the one that takes the mantle from Justin Simmons. So can he prove to be that safety that takes the mantle from Justin and is that starting safety that they can have, that in essence replaces him, and can show some of those same things that Justin had, leadership, etc., to where, he can be that guy, right? So I think PJ Locke is certainly an option as far as a player in terms of, who has the most approved. But I feel like your candidates for who is the safety with the most approved is JL Skinner, Caden Stearns, Delaren Turner-Yell. You could argue it's Delaren Turner-Yell based on default. Granted, he was a late round draft pick. He may or may not make the roster. I would venture to guess he's actually on the roster bubble right now. And if they do move on from him, they're going to have to end up coming to an injury settlement, right? And I don't even know if they're going to be able to get to that point, because if they're able to do that, cool. But I would actually, if I'm probably making a prediction based on right now, and I know I probably said before that he's probably a roster cut, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if he's going to be an IR person that they put on IR, and he's basically season-ending IR even before, preseason or, regular season got started. So I probably would say Caden Stearns, I think that JL Skinner certainly falls into that. I'm very, speaking of the curiosity and intrigue with the safety room, I'm fascinated by JL Skinner because there was a report that came out. It was not a report. It was from the horse's mouth, pun intended, the horse's mouth of Sean Payton, where he talked about Skinner and the scout team, and they were very fascinated with his growth. He was learning at a much higher rate than he was at the beginning part of the year, which is exactly what you want. It's exactly what you want from a safety. So, and I think that anytime you listen to these, coaching interviews or press conferences or anything like that, anytime they either name drop a player positively, that is a takeaway. That is a takeaway that I would have if I'm listening to those press conferences, is if he's talking about JL Skinner in a positive light, probably want to file that one away. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be something that is, like he's going to be a prominent player, right? That he's going to be a prominent player, although starting safety, it's going to be replacing Caden Stearns, Brandon Jones, etc., right? But I mean, I'm very curious to see how they're going to use him, because we talked about it. He's a big safety. And I've thrown this out here, and I know that a lot of people have been throwing it out that, well, why don't they add another safety to the room? And that's going to be probably another conversation for us here in just a little bit. But I don't, I actually don't hate the idea of using him as like a Jamal Adams type of role, which is truly not necessarily a safety, but just a player that is linebacker, box safety, that you're using, almost in pass rush situations to a certain extent. He's an extra pass rusher. I wouldn't even be the least bit surprised if they even almost convert him to a linebacker in a year or couple of years. And you're almost talking about a very athletic player, an athletic safety, that got converted to a linebacker just based on his size. And maybe that's in the cards. Maybe that is actually in the cards here, with that linebacker room, and especially given, about the linebacker room, which we will talk about tonight, obviously. I think that's a very interesting wild card and an interesting wrinkle schematically that I would be very fascinated with, if they can be able to do that with, with Vance Joseph and, of course, Jim Leonard.
Yeah, damn, that's an interesting point. Like, what was the you were saying? What was the question we were gonna get to later? That was interesting.
Oh, linebackers. We're going to talk about linebackers a bit later. Not quite.
No. It was like no, it was like about the safety room. It was like
should we add more to the safety room? Like,
should we add more to the safety room?
Like go out and sign a player. Like for instance, like I mentioned Jamal Adams. Should we go sign a Jamal Adams and bring him in?
Jamal Adams available?
I actually think he is.
He is a free agent.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I don't want to pay the money.
I don't even want Jamal Adams.
I mean, I wouldn't want Jamal Adams either. But what others? Let's see.
Yeah, because I mean, technically, the Broncos re-signed Locke, but they signed 2 safeties. They brought PJ Locke in. They signed Brandon Jones. They have players to that room, that they basically signed with 2 safeties.
Mm-hmm. Let's see.
I don't think
who else is available. I'm honest. I mean, like, I think my initial gut is probably no.
So, I mean, I'm not the least bit impressed with the safety room.
No, I just don't think it's worth spending the money, to be honest, on any of these guys.
Not to mention, there's probably other positional resources you could put it in.
Yeah. I'm going to say no. I'm going to go with no. We should not add to the safety room. I might eat my words later into the season,
It is training camp.
We decide like, yep. Well, we should have because he sucks.
Or he's injured and they need another body. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the Brandon Jones. I mean, okay. The second we signed Brandon Jones, I was like, no, there's no way. Like, we're definitely not going to add anyone. But, yeah, I don't see it happening.
Yeah. Now, moving on a little bit to the linebacker room, unless there was something else that you wanted to touch on. Well, I guess let's talk about it maybe from the other move that they did make, and we did touch on it briefly. But Jim Leonard, they hired Jim Leonard. They hired Jim Leonard for the secondary coach, right? What was your initial reaction, Brandon? What was your initial reaction to the Jim Leonard hiring?
Well, the initial reaction I had was Vance Joseph is going to get fired, and this is going to be our new defensive coordinator. That was my initial reaction. Obviously, that didn't happen, but what was yours?
I was pretty stoked.
I mean, I was happy. I was excited. Don't get me wrong. Like, fantastic hiring. One of the best hiring moves of just this cycle in general. Jim Leonard, I wouldn't be surprised, could be a head coach in the NFL. Probably. I don't know if he'd want to be. He'd probably want to go back to, if anything, he might want to go back to being a head coach in college. But yeah, fantastic hire. Just shocked that it happened. But my initial reaction was like, there's no way we're hiring this guy to be a position coach. He is going to be the defensive coordinator because Vance Joseph had shit the bed. I'm going to refresh my page. Hopefully that fixes my camera. 1 second.
We have a absolutely incredible magic trick that we've been able to pull off for you guys. Brandon is literally frozen, but you guys can clearly hear him.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it's quite the magic trick that we're able to pull off. But yeah, I mean, as far as Jim Leonard is concerned, like I think that for
Boom.
See, incredible magic trick.
That's so weird. I've never seen that happen. Anyway, yeah. I mean, just blows my mind that he's a position coach. To be honest, like, well, I honestly don't even buy it. I don't know if I 100% buy that. That's the only reason we hired him. I could easily see a scenario where, sadly, this defense goes back to being a little bit under Vance Joseph, and Sean Payton and company is just like, nope, we give you that opportunity to turn around. You did. You got lucky. You had a lot of turnovers, and you're out. Jim Leonard, you're the new DC. Wouldn't be surprised.
Honestly, I wouldn't even be shocked if the Broncos defense is better, but they don't move on, or they still move on from Vance Joseph and they hire Jim Leonard. And actually, maybe in the best case scenario, I actually would be. I would be I would be elated if the Broncos were able to move on from Vance Joseph. He's able to either take another defensive coordinator position elsewhere, but more so the compensatory pick of him being a head coach that next year, and then that's when you can be able to move on from Jim Leonard, right? Yeah, at that point. But I don't even think it's out of the cards that the defense is relatively better, but they still move on from Vance because of the succession planning. And I think that's where, it's really vital. Like it is when you are a really good either college football program or you are a really good successful company, if you have good succession planning, like it's what helps you make yourself a really good franchise or a really good company. And I think that, and that goes for the Broncos, defense right now with Jim Leonard. It goes with the Broncos offense right now with guys like Davis Webb. It goes even to the Broncos front office. We touched about, David Shaw, right, to that Broncos front office. So and Cody Rager, of course. So I think succession planning is something that Sean Payton is very clearly, and even the ownership group has very clearly thought of when building the Broncos staff right now.
Well, did you read the Denver Post report about the Jim Leonard hire back in February when that happened?
Why don't you enlighten us?
Okay, so basically it goes into an interview that was done of, I cannot possibly pronounce his name correctly, but a linebacker that played under Jim Leonard at Wisconsin, Meima Njongmeda, I don't know, but basically like a former player of Leonard's, and basically goes into saying like, absolutely fantastic coach. This man is like literally a defensive genius. And then it goes into a bit more, but kind of like his backstory. So obviously Jim Leonard played for Denver. He actually played for the Saints as well. I believe for Sean Payton for a season. Yeah. And the interesting thing that they kind of also bring up in the second part of the article, which is talking about more of an interview directly with Coach Payton, is that Payton apparently was considering hiring Leonard as our defensive coordinator or potentially a different staff member when he was first hired, when Sean Payton was first hired, before Vance, but it didn't work out because Jim had hip replacement surgery. So like he really couldn't go through that move and like commit to a full-time job, is what the article says. So it was interesting to me that was already on a short list of someone that he considered to hire as his defensive coordinator, or at least some position on defense. The timing didn't work out, but then fast forward a year later, timing works out better, and we bring in Leonard. But yeah, I mean, Sean Payton, another guy, pretty much said like he's a genius. He's extremely bright.
And I think that a lot of people who really follow college football expected that he was going to be the head coach of Wisconsin. And I think a lot of Wisconsin fans will tell you that they, that they 100% expected Jim Leonard to be taking the Wisconsin job. And no, I mean, they decided to be a little bit more aggressive. They're being a little bit more aggressive, and they're actually going forward with the idea of.
Well, they hired Luke Fickell, didn't they?
Yeah, they hired Luke Fickell. They went with a bit more aggressive approach, and they went with Luke Fickell. And so, and that really soured things. And a lot of people were even curious if Leonard is going to be on the staff for Luke Fickell. That ended up not happening.
Well, he took a year off. He was an analyst for a year, Jim Leonard.
I wouldn't say he took a year off, but yeah, he became
a year off from coaching.
But he from prominent coaching. Like when you're an analyst, you're coaching, but like he went to go.
You know what I mean?
but he went to go be an analyst with, a person he was rather familiar with, which is Brett Bielema, with Illinois. And so that's when he became an analyst. So took the year off from being a head coach, took a much lesser role, which surprised a lot of people, and so then now, he's, he was doing defensive coordinator interviews. I think he even interviewed for the Eagles job for defensive coordinator, right? As did Vance Joseph. So I think that, no, it is 100% not out of the cards that he's the Broncos defensive coordinator, next year. And it just goes to show you, as Brandon said, like, he is a very bright defensive mind, very aggressive, bright defensive mind. And so specifically with that safety room, I would at least anticipate that Broncos room being very aggressive with turnover, trying to create turnovers again, blitzing, even different sets with how the skies looks a bit in that back end. I would, not be the least bit shocked if the Broncos are trying to recreate at least some of that turnover streak that they had that really got them into playoff contention. Moving forward now to the linebacker room, specifically the inside linebackers, because obviously we talked about the outside linebackers, if you will, or I should say like the pass rushers, the edge rushers, if you will, into that. Man,
this is unfortunately, and it's not, I don't think it's as bad as the safety room, but this is kind of another one of those areas where I'm like, I do not know what to expect.
You certainly know there will be one starter.
There's one starter. There's one starter that I feel comfortable with. Well,
it's okay.
Maybe two.
Who's okay? You kind of led us with that. So who would that second person be?
I mean, Jonas Griffith, I would be pretty comfortable with.
I think right now,
Singleton and Griffith are my top two.
I think you're starting linebackers for the Broncos defense will end up being Alex Singleton and Jonas Griffith.
Okay, it's currently listed as, I think. Well, hold on, this is on ESPN.
ESPN or probably OurLads.com or something.
Yeah, let me see if I can get, because they listed as Cody Barton. Yeah, they're not gonna. I think even Our Lads has it as Cody Barton.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, but I do think, like, I would not be surprised if it's Alex Singleton, Jonas Griffith. I would not be unhappy if it's Alex Singleton, Jonas Griffith. My problem is with the people behind them. Like Justin Strnad, I'm kind of surprised he's still around, to be honest. Like, he's kind of done nothing. And remember when he came in and he was like, this is the Kelsey killer because he's so athletic? That didn't happen. Not even slightly. Not even a little bit.
Converted from safety.
Ugh. Maybe he's going back to the safety room. I don't know. Drew Sanders is still listed as an inside linebacker, and I still don't know if that's true. What's that?
Well, who knows now?
Yeah. I mean, just pick something, please. Andre Smith, no idea. Lavelle Bailey, no clue. So
he did. Yeah. They did mention Peyton did mention him by name.
Bailey, yeah, I saw that. But I do think you're right. I think Singleton, Griffith are going to be your top two. Maybe Cody Barton sneaks in there. He's not bad. I think he had like a 50-yard interception return for a touchdown, I think, against Trevor Siemian.
You're talking Barton?
Barton, yeah. Which is kind of funny, but
I think that's the area of the game where I think you'll really start to see Barton have a focal point with his team, or like the pass defense sets, right? Is where you'll see him in pass coverage.
Yeah, that's where I think, again, like the Alex Singleton, Cody Barton combo wouldn't necessarily be like, I would understand why you would do that, because Alex Singleton is like the tackling machine. Cody Barton is the guy that you kind of feel more comfortable putting against like back end space and in against the pass. But I feel like I personally think Jonas Griffith can also do both of those things. So I don't know. I like Jonas Griffith a little bit more.
But I think I think that to Barton, he's a wild card here, because if you look statistically at the tackling numbers he's been able to put up the last couple seasons, the last current couple seasons, he put up a lot of numbers. He put up a lot of numbers with Washington as a tackling machine. And funny enough, it compares a bit favorably to Alex Singleton before he signed with Denver. Not maybe to the same degree, but I wouldn't be surprised if the same trajectory of story, ended up happening here, where he starts a bit in preseason. He is slow out of the gate a little bit, and then he just really takes off from week one, because that's exactly what happened to Singleton. Singleton had a pretty rough preseason in his first year here, but then week one hit, and it was like he was a completely different animal at linebacker. And so I would not be the least bit surprised. And I think that the linebacker room, I will say this, I think the linebacker room as a whole got a lot better, but it got a lot better from the special teams side of things. They brought back Justin Strnad for special teams value.
For special teams, yeah.
The Andre Smith signing that they brought in from the Falcons, specifically special teams. So I think that the Broncos have done a fantastic job about addressing special teams, and so much so that, we'll get into that, of course, when we talk about the offensive playmakers, but who knows what's going to end up being, the way that they, do things as far as the new kickoff rules. Will we see Quinn Miners and the people of the offensive line actually take part, in some of those new kickoff rules, the way that, the blocking and stuff is set up? Like, will we actually see some members of the offensive line, be those blockers, be those extra blockers, So I think that's one of the things that I'm very curious about seeing, how that's going to shape up. But I think of anything, I was going to say, like, as far as rooms, that they really upgraded that.
For sure.
Special teams. It's truly that linebacker position where you really kind of felt they really took a huge emphasis there.
Yeah, I mean, the one interesting thing, the thing that intrigues me about Cody Barton, who obviously, like, this is his first year on the team, is so he was originally a starter for the Seahawks since 2020. He was their starting linebacker, or in their starting linebacker rotation. Had a pretty decent season. 2021 had a decent season. 2022 really kind of took off. I think he led the team. I'll have to double check this, with 136 tackles. He had 6 passes defended and 2 picks, which, like, kind of took off a little bit. They let him go. He went to the Commanders on a 1-year deal. And this is what kind of blew my mind, because, like, he did sort of fall down a little bit in terms of, like, the kind of season that he had. He ended the year with 121 tackles, but he also sprained his ankle in week 7 and was on injured reserve for a few weeks.
Which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. So I feel like he probably would have continued or been on the pace to continue his run of, like, pretty consistent improvement and, like, being a good linebacker for the Commanders. Although the interesting thing to me, like, I don't understand why they let him go. I mean, I know it was only he signed a 1-year deal with what's that?
I was gonna say a lot of Washington
people liked him. Yeah.
Or no, they were like, "Oh, please take him. Like, take him off our hands."
They liked that we took him.
Yeah. Like, if you actually, if you get a chance,
I didn't see that.
Yeah, some of the Commander fans, like, but here's the thing: it's like social media is a cesspool. So, like, they will say all sorts of crap on there.
Well, the interesting thing is, like, how many of them even realized, like, they just thought he sucked, but he also was on injured reserve. Like, did they even realize he was not playing? I don't know. It's interesting to me, but again, I prefer Jonas Griffith. He intrigues me. Cody Barton does, but I do think in general, like, I'm still low key kind of worried about the inside linebackers. Like, I think we need to add to that room.
Yeah, and we
in some way, shape, or form, like through the draft, maybe. So we'll see, but I think it's going to be Griffith and Singleton probably. But Barton is interesting. I don't know if I'd have him as a starter, but yeah, I mean, I do think he had a pretty decent year for the Seahawks. He went to the Commanders, had a pretty decent year. He got injured, still ended up with an okay season. And I mean, depth is depth, but I do personally think it's probably going to be Griffith.
The thing that's just so fun and fascinating with Griffith is we talk about special teams players and special teams, good special teams players. Well, the thing with Jonas is he's a good special teamer, and he's actually a rather solid pinch starter. Like him getting hurt really kind of put a wrench into things with that starting unit with the inside linebacker, and it kind of forced the team to take a bit of some auditions, right? And that's when they went out and signed. I think they traded. They signed Kenny Young. So it was in essence almost like a Von Miller for draft picks, and then they ended up signing Kenny Young or something. It was almost to a certain degree like they traded for Kenny Young to a degree, but they really didn't, because I think they signed him off the street. But it was Jonas Griffith and Josie Jewell for a bit, or Josie Jewell and Kenny Young. Like it was it was to the point where I think you saw some auditions being, made. And I think that like for the Broncos linebacker room, like they were trying to figure out who is going to be that linebacker that's going to be, the Robin or / Batman to Josie Jewell. And actually they went and rolled with their Batman, which was Alex Singleton, and Josie Jewell went forward and signed with the Carolina Panthers. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility they do go with Jonas Griffith, because there was a stretch there specifically a couple of years ago where he might have been their best run defender, at linebacker. Like the way that Griffith is able to read and react and diagnose plays, I really feel like would go really well with Singleton. And I think that the way that they both play with their hair on fire, I think they would complement each other really well as far as that inside linebacker room.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see. I'm still worried about the linebacker room. I can't tell if I'm more worried about linebacker or safety.
I'm probably worried more about linebacker than I am safety.
I am too, probably. I think Singleton and Griffith, honestly, like having Singleton and Griffith are kind of almost at the same level to me as like, if I'm looking instead at the safety room, like that level of, if those are the two starters, I think PJ Locke is a better safety. Like, and I'm obviously comparing two completely different positions, but since we don't really know about Brandon Jones a ton yet, Katie Stearns coming off of the injury. What?
No, I was just saying, us fans don't know much about Brandon Jones.
Don't know much about Brandon Jones as far as like him on this team in this system is what I mean.
Right.
Like I think probably kind of like similar to like having JL Skinner and Delarian Turner Yell be your starters. I mean, like, I don't know. It's kind of like they're not sexy, but they can kind of get the job done. JL Skinner, we don't know. And that's kind of why I'm I don't know. I think I am a bit more worried about linebacker personally than I am about safety, but I'm still worried about safety for a similar reason, because it's like very much what's going to happen with this room. I don't know where I was going with that comparison. It made more sense in my head. But yeah, I mean, I am personally more worried about linebacker, but again, I do think.
Would you consider? So we talked about.
I think it's more if it's Singleton and Griffith, it's good, but obviously you never know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Griffith has a history of injury. I don't know. I think it's just anyone behind them. I'm scared.
We talked about it with the safety room, but would you consider a positional change for a guy like a JL Skinner based on his size and, the way that he is maybe was a bit of a tweener linebacker, if you will, the way that they do use the Jamal, but because that does add, I feel like maybe another wrinkle, maybe with that linebacker room.
I mean, I'm already, like, anytime we're talking about another position change, I'm a bit wary, to be honest.
Yeah. Look at Drew Sanders.
We'll see. Well, I know. That's why I'm just like, Drew Sanders, man, they did you dirty. I don't know. I still don't know what you're doing. I don't know what position you play.
Well, and it's the thing.
Don't change it around.
the thing that sucks about Drew Sanders is it was completely out of his control. The injuries and stuff, like, it's completely out of his control. Like, he didn't like be like, okay, I'm going to be injured on Tuesday, right? Like, he didn't actually, like, force himself to be injured. It was just an unfortunate set of circumstances where he just got injured, right? He just got injured. And I think going forward, it will be very interesting to see how they truly operate it with Sanders, because the way that this linebacker room is and how they view it going forward. And we're not talking training camp. We're not talking training camp in terms of this year. We're more talking about the future with Drew on this. But depending on what they do and do not add to that room, and I will put the emphasis on do not in this case, but like, but I think that, like, there is absolutely a case where if they don't add anything to the room next year, he probably could be your inside linebacker if everything that we've been hearing or by their based on their intentions, like, that he could be their inside linebacker, right? Like, he could be their inside linebacker in 2025.
I still want to add to the room.
I'm right there with you, but so yeah, we'll certainly see. And if they add another edge rusher, of course, that will of course add more fuel to the fire. To possibly Drew Sanders being an inside linebacker in 2025.
You know what linebacker is still available? Quan
Alexander.
He has the injury issue, but like,
and familiarity with Peyton.
Yeah, like, I wouldn't hate it. I mean, you're not putting all your eggs in that basket, but
for a player that's out there, he's somewhat trustworthy in the sense.
I mean, you can trust him as a player. It's just the injuries you never know. But again, no one schedules injuries. No one's like, you know what? I can't make it to practice next Thursday. I'm going to be injured.
That's right. What Big Mike says, yes. Like, I think I'll go get injured on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Quan Alexander. Interesting name. We'll see. I think you could probably get him somewhat cheap, but there's also a reason he's still a free agent. Like, he's 29. He's about to turn 30. So he might be like a 1-year rental, but I don't think it would hurt.
I would be shocked if it was a 2-year. Like, and even at this point, if they sign anybody in free agency, I would be pretty shocked if they sign anybody for a 2-year deal. Any other final thoughts, Brandon, or something else that you wanted to
bring me football? I need football back, please. Yeah. Or just anything. NCAA, I'll take it. Just, I need something. We're close-ish.
That was the one thing that I will say about, NCAA, or maybe to a certain extent Deadpool and Wolverine. But like, they really have capitalized on
different reasons.
But like, they really capitalized on this idea that, like, there's hardly any football to talk about, since it's the doldrums of the offseason. So let's just go ahead and just release NCAA 25 on Monday, or if you have Xbox, you can get a chance to play it earlier. But like, let's go ahead and just release the NCAA 25 so that you guys can just enjoy it. You guys can speed things up for about, should I say, for maybe a week in terms of how you're feeling. And then we can finally get to training camp and have stuff to talk about. So I don't know. I know from a fact do a circle back. I'm super stoked about it. Brandon apparently doesn't understand how Dynasty works, and he's going to be using Oregon.
Dude, it was just for the vibes, man.
So that's my takeaway from the show tonight, is that Brandon does not know how Dynasty works. So, in
my defense, I never played any of the original NCAA games because I was really young, and I also didn't like football at that time. It's a long story.
It's is it worth a podcast? I guess that's the question. Is it worth a bunny trail for you to explain why you just did not want to invest?
Because I grew up with a parent that was a Chiefs fan and wouldn't explain the game to me and would just scream at the TV. That's all there is to it. And I played basketball. That was my sport. Basketball was my sport. And I was tried to convince, he convinced me, my dad tried to convince me to play football. And just also because I was a kid and I was like, well, I don't want to do what my parents want me to do. That just made me not want to play it more. Yeah. So it just was a vicious cycle. Also why I hate the Chiefs so much, other than the fact that they're the Chiefs.
Understandable. It's going to be a lot of fun. And hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode. It was a lot of fun. We got a chance to talk about the secondary. We got a chance to talk about the linebackers. We may or may not have a guest next week, so stay tuned for that. And yes, I know we've been teasing it in terms of him possibly being on this particular show, but John Super Bowlen will be on our show. We've been talking, and he'll be on at a little bit of a later date. So, but thank you guys so much for hopping on with us. Make sure you follow Brandon and myself on social media, on X, at Cameron Parker PO, at Brandon Miller PO. And then make sure you follow the show handle, which is at Manly Broncos. Make sure you, again, tell your friends, have their friends tell their friends about the Manly Broncos podcast. Subscribe to the MHRT Network on YouTube. We are sitting at about 1.3 subscribers, so let's kind of maybe see if we can get to 2,000 by the end of the year. I know that's a total.
Only 1.3 people.
Right. Well,
I think
the smart intellectual people will actually get it. The people that are probably, sitting there probably maybe, 8:40 and they're really, really tired, possibly like how I was last night. They just couldn't really think, process, and actually talk or even text. They might take a little bit for them to realize, what does 1.33 mean? But anyway, thank you guys so much for hopping in with us. So thank you guys. Make sure you tune in again next week. We will we'll see if we may do a redirect on on it, and maybe we'll do a redirect on the training camp. We'll talk about maybe something else, but we'll keep you guys posted about that. Again, thank you guys so much. In terms of the guest who we probably will have on, the tea leaves possibly could be Jeremy Nichols, Nuggets fan, Denver sports fan. Possibly next week. I know a lot of people in the Denver sports know Mr. Jeremy Nichols, so we're going to try and see if we can get him on the show. But again, thank you guys so much. Follow Brandon on X. Follow myself on X. Hit that subscribe button over there on YouTube for MHRT Network. It has been a blast, and we will see you next time.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle.